The voice of truth tells me a different story. I will choose to listen and believe the voice of truth.
Let's get started tonight. So, every month we do a different topic, and I always like to start off by talking about, just fundamental things that we all need to do to really stay healthy. The first thing we need to do is come to classes like this, right? And a lot of people think since we video the classes that means that they don't need to show up, right? That's why it's so empty tonight, right? It's all really, really empty compared to what we usually, the turnout that we're accustomed to. And I thought I'd address that right off the bat because one of the things that you need to do to be successful is you need to interact. You need to ask questions. I mean, we do these videos, it's more of an educational thing for you guys when you're, lying face down, when you're breathing, things of that nature. But it's not so like you kind of get to take the easy pass. Does that make sense? Because whenever we take the easy pass on anything we do in life, we kind of lose out, don't we? We lose out. And so if we're doing it the right way and we're showing up and we're putting in and we're adding that effort, then we can ask questions and we can engage. Because who here usually, unless it's a blockbuster thriller, which I tend to think that my talks are exciting, right? But let's face it, it's not like watching Tom Cruise, right? And his biceps pulsate as he goes up and down a rock or something, right? It's not that. So if we're at home, how much are we actually focusing on the information? Some of us might. How much are we getting out of it? And then if we don't understand something, how are we able to integrate that? How are we able to ask questions? How are we able to get feedback on maybe a concept we didn't understand? We did put out the calendar. Did everybody get a calendar for the entire year? Awesome. Now, was the calendar to create an easy pass? No, silly rascals. What the calendar was is so you can write down on your calendar all the dates and times so you can be here and you can show up and you can save lives. So if you're here, pat yourself on the back. You're doing the right thing already, and we're always going to send text messages out to you. You'll probably hear 5,000 times to come to the talk. And why do we do that? Because we know the people that come here and the people that show up and they don't take the easy pass, those are the people really getting the best results. And there's things that come up. I get it. We got responsibilities out the wazoo, don't we? We got so much that we're responsible for. Family members. Some of you are taking care of a family member, and then you got 2 jobs or several jobs. I totally get it. What I'm asking from you is one night a month, show up here with an open heart, an open mind, open ears, and learn something. Now, you may look down at the calendar, you may say, you know what, Doc, I know everything there is to know about that subject, which I would find that very surprising, because I can't even say that, and I spent 10 years in school. But even if you know everything there is to know about that subject, I don't know about you, but when I do seminars and trainings and recertifications and licensing things all the time, I know that every time that I go before any type of recertification, seminar board, whatever you want to call it, and we're all across the country doing our thing as doctors to really get dipped in so we can better help you, even if I know a lot of content that the speaker is saying, there's always one thing that lands differently for me. Can anyone identify with that? And if you integrate that one thing, isn't it powerful about how much more anchored that subject matter that you already knew now becomes? And so that's what I want to challenge you to do. I want to challenge you to say, how can I get more re-anchored into maybe subjects that I know a little bit about or a lot about, but I guarantee if you look over the next 11 months, I guarantee you know this much of resistance stretching because I'm one of 12 people in the United States that knows how to do it. And I guarantee some of the other subjects there's probably controversy about. And so let's expand our minds. I love doing that. So partner with me on that. Partner with me on that. Let's make a commitment to do that together. Let's make a commitment next time we come to this talk to have it filled up with guests as well, right? Because the other thing that allows people to get the best results is those who now say, you know what, I've learned so much, and I've learned so much about the message and so much that I could do to change my life, and now I want to share it with somebody else. I want to see who else can be blessed by what I've gotten. Because just in the last 2 weeks, it's amazing how many lives have been changed around here. Some of you are sitting here right now. Some of the people whose lives have been positively impacted and changed, they couldn't make it tonight for whatever, and that's okay. I'm only talking about the 5 or 10% easy passers, right? I want to stay home. I got my popcorn, my drink, my fuzzy cat. And that's tempting. I got a fuzzy cat too. His name's Dylan. I call him Fuzz Kitty. And that's tempting to do that. But I want you to come here so you can get dipped in. So you can get dipped in and re-anchored. Dipped in and re-anchored. That's what we want to do. And then share the message with people. I just had a lady last weekend. This is a lady I've been telling for a long time about how emotional stress causes physical issues in our body. That sounds good on paper, and it certainly sounds good coming out of our mouth. But then when it happens to us, we're like, oh, doc, what are you talking about? There's no way that could be because of my ex-husband, and he sent me a Facebook message. Or there's no way it could be because of the stress from the IRS or the negative movie I watched or the nasty stuff on CNN and Fox News that's talking about 10 people died at a taco stand. There's no way that would negatively impact me. Yes, it does. I'm going to share that with you in a second. I'm going to show you how it actually causes degenerative conditions in your spine and your nervous system. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you a different picture from research articles. You guys think I come out here with all these notes and I just read to you. This is all research. Homework I did for you guys, right? Because I'm always learning something new. And I want to make sure you're learning something new too. So, but I've told this lady this like 4 times. I'm like, I'm telling you, you're really tight. You always kind of control things a little bit, right? Because I have to water it down a little bit. I don't want to be too harsh to her, right? And I love her to death. I'm like, you control things a little bit. And this is confidence right here. And see, your head's forward to your shoulders, and your shoulders are rotated in, and then you're like, has anybody who know who Gollum is from Lord of the Rings? Yeah. Or Quasimodo? She's like, I'm about to adjust her in this weird like morphine alien position when she's about to get adjusted. And I'm trying to get her to calm down. I'm like, you just did like 5 minutes of breathing. You shouldn't be like this. But she hadn't been adjusted before she came here. She had been accosted, almost like hit or kind of brutalized. So the whole idea of somebody touching her neck just put her in tension. But you guys ever noticed how we kind of play one thing in our life is how we play all things in our life? Do you know what I mean by that? Like how we do one thing, it's kind of like how you show up at work is how you show up when you're at your house. It's how you show up when you interact with other people. How you play life is how you play life. Anybody agree with that? It's a true statement, isn't it? If you really think about it, some of us, the people that are going no, which I didn't see anybody, but if you're going no, you're the person that needs to reevaluate that because it is so true. We definitely do that. So she controls a lot, and she would be like this on the table and all that stuff. Well, what was it causing her? What was the cost of that? The cost was migraines. You know the things, the rackets, right? The rackets that we run in our head, meaning the things that we think are true but really aren't about ourselves, our identity and our life, and the story we tell ourselves about our life. Those rackets cause a lot of emotional stress. So she had all these rackets running that were kind of culturally based things that were tying her down emotionally. So she would try to control it, and what would she get? Migraines. And I kept telling her that, but she couldn't see it. I mean, I could tell her that for 4 months, right, over and over again. Yeah, the crazy doctor, the quack, that's probably what she's saying, and I always think people are talking about ducks when they say that. But she kept saying that, yeah, okay, doc, okay. And then when we did NET on her on Saturday, or maybe it was a week ago Saturday, I don't know what day it is. You ever notice how the days just kind of roll together? We all can relate to that, I'm sure. And when we cleared the emotion, and she touched her neck, and we found out it was related to grief, it was related to all the burdens she was holding on with what had culturally been put on her by her family, and some of you sitting here can relate to that. She gets up and she's walking out the door. She's like, Doc, I don't have a migraine. She's like surprised, right? I'm like, of course you don't, right? Because we got to the cause of what's going on. You don't have a migraine because we got to the cause. Now, the most important thing we do in this office is reconnect you to life. At the brain, there it is, usually on the left side. I was turning around. I'm like looking for a brain here, and I got a triangle. Your brain to life comes down through your spinal cord and out over the nerves to every cell, tissue, and organ. So that's the most important thing we do. But there's a chemical, physical, and emotional component to a subluxation, isn't there? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. You're like, I thought we were talking about spinal degeneration and the 3 causes. We are. But what do you think the 3 causes of spinal degeneration definitely are? Physical, chemical, and emotional stress. So for the next 45 minutes, I'm not going to tell you something you already know. Some of you just came here to get the 3 answers, right? You're checking the box right now. Oh, I'm tuning out. I'm going to Ray Donovan in my head in the episode I saw last night. Don't do that. Stay with me. Stay with me. But what we're going to tell you now is the why behind that. The why. Why is it chemical, physical, and emotional stress that leads to spinal degeneration? Well, let's talk about that. We'll address physical first. What would be a physical stress that you have in your life right now? This is going to be interactive tonight, so I'm not going to do all the talking tonight. So physical stress, somebody think of a physical stress and raise your hand of what you think a physical stress would be that would negatively impact your nervous system and your spinal health. Physical stresses. Go ahead, Justin.
Sitting at a desk all day.
Sitting at a desk all day. Let's talk about that. And all these research articles, you know what they're talking about? Related to physical stress and spinal degeneration? They're talking about forward head posture, better said, anterior head translation. And what's normal for forward head posture or anterior head translation? What's normal? What are the normal parameters that we want to be at? If your head's over your shoulders, guys, think back to your doctor's report. Some of you never want to discuss that or think about that ever again. But think about the night that I made you sit here for an hour and a half and you felt like you were going to urinate all over yourself. Right? Think about it. Even though I gladly told you at the beginning, this is not a prison, use the restroom, right? And some of you are like scared to get up, right? Like right now, the video camera's rolling, you're like, I better not go to the bathroom. Please, go to the bathroom, okay? Go to the bathroom. So forward head posture, what's normal?
31, 42, and 0.
Love it. So what's the 0 then? Beautiful man. I love you. I'm going to give you a big kiss later on, cutie bear. Big kiss. Big kiss, right? So 0 millimeters, that's normal. Head over the shoulders. So if we're constantly sitting at a desk, what are we doing? Yeah. We're definitely going forward, aren't we? And then what does the chair normally do? The chair's doing what? Is it tilted forward so our pelvis tilts forward? No. What do we usually do? We have chairs that are too long. Now, I'm not going to go too much into this because there's certain things I want you to learn, and hopefully you've been online and you've looked at the posture video and the other videos under the advanced healthcare class. You guys know you have a resource at your fingertips with our website? Anybody been on our website? If you go under the media section, the advanced healthcare classes, okay? If you go under the media section, the advanced healthcare classes, there is resistance stretching, there's advanced healthcare classes, and then there's health hacks. All that information is for you. Now, you can't access the resistance stretching unless I give you the password. I do that for a reason, because there's a certain point in your care in which I want you to have that information, a certain point that I don't want you to have that information. But everything else is there for you. Every Monday night at 7:30, we go live for health hacks. So even if it's not the subject I'm asking, but it's remotely related, get on there, get online, and ask a question. We would love to interact with you. Instead of going and getting a flu shot, or you're worried about, somebody said recently, they're like, I was worried about coming in to get my Atlas rocked because I thought I'd give everybody else the flu. You know, this place has some of the healthiest people in it. And occasionally we'll get in a drifter, you know, a high plains drifter. But all we do is put that bone in the right place, and God does the healing. The universe, innate, whatever you want to call it. But we put that first bone in the right place. So you don't have to worry about coming in here. Best time to come in here is when you're sick and suffering and expressing health. I had to go off on a tangent for a second. So when you're sitting at a desk, right, what it's doing is it's tilting that booty backwards. Because most of the time you're not in chairs like this. Now, these chairs aren't as perfect as I want them. We're going to be getting some cushions in them to elevate them and put them exactly where I want them. But these chairs are better than a lot of your office desks. Because most of your office chairs, I said desk, but most of your office chairs have these big, tall armrests. And what do the armrests do to your shoulders? Bring them up, right? And then what happens to your head? You get the weird parrot bird syndrome, right? The ostrich, right? Like that. And now the bottom of the chair is what? It's not like these where your legs kind of hang off, right? Where your knees are hanging off and there's space between your knee and the part that you're sitting on. What's it doing? It's coming and basically starting to go below the knee and kind of into the calf, right? So now what happens to your pelvis, guys? It goes back like that. So now you're sitting in your lower back, so how does your body compensate? It goes forward like that. Everybody following on what I'm saying? And do we keep the monitors characteristically up high at our offices and at workplaces? They're keeping them down here. Yeah. So the monitors are too low. The keyboards are too high. You look like a weird ferret or a squirrel or something, right? And then the armrests are high, so you're just all kinds of screwed up. And then are you getting up frequently to take a break? Or are you sitting sedentary for like 2 hours? You're sitting sedentary for 2 hours at a time. My recommendation is to get up every 30 minutes. Set a timer and get up every 30 minutes. And that's how you're going to rewrite some of those neurological patterns. Because what's happening every time you sit? Well, according to Dr. Panjabi, from a study that was done in the 80s in the Journal of Spine, your lower back throughout the day, just by you even walking or showing up as a living life form, moving on 2 legs during the day and not being in the bed with your feet elevated, you're shearing those facet joints. They're called facet joints. They're the weird little eyeballs in the back of your spine, basically. I'll show you what facet joints are. These are your facet joints here, right here and right here, okay? And you're shearing these joints. These joints are shearing back and forth. Everybody see that? Everybody see that joint right there? They're basically these 2 little flaps that kind of interlock the spinal segments, okay? And so those facet joints are shearing because of the load and the compression that gravity and your natural body weight are creating on your spine. Can I get some water, Caden? Doing tongue twisters over here. Yeah, so those facet joints are interlocking, and that pressure just from gravity and just from being there in the daytime, right? And your spine just having to take those loads, those are shearing. Now, what's going to increase that? A sedentary position isn't going to allow those facet joints to expand and lengthen. It's going to crouch them down. And forward head posture is going to do more of that. Because we have 3 curves in our spine. And 2 of them are called what we call lordotic curves. What's a lordotic curve? Say that 10 times. Lordotic, right? It's this curve, like a banana, right? Where do we have another banana? In our lower back, right? We have a kyphosis here, which means it goes the other way. So this would be your head sitting up here. I didn't make Caden draw like a skull or anything. She was frightened that I was going to make her draw this. Better her than me. Mine would look like some sloppy, you guys have seen my drawings. It's an ugly sight, a very ugly sight. So we've got the banana-shaped curve. We already knew that. But now we've got a kyphosis somewhere in the mid-back area, right? We don't want it at T1. What's the kyphosis that I'm talking about that we don't want? You know that weird hump? Everybody sees everybody now and they're forward like this and they're on a walker and all that? What do the walkers and the canes do? Yeah, absolutely. They make it worse, don't they? Like I had a gentleman I'm working with today. He's got a cane. And maybe he's been under care. He's a new family member here. Maybe he's been under care 2 visits. And already, of course, right, his Creator's working on him. God's really working on healing him. Universe is totally healing that system. Totally healing it. And he's like standing up and like feeling good, right? He's kind of like strutting a little bit. He's got his cane. But what happened 2 seconds later? He goes forward. I'm like, hey, brother. And I don't want to say his name because I haven't gotten permission to tell his story yet. So I'm doing an alias. We'll call him Mr. X. I said, hey, Mr. X, how come you're not like standing up? He's like, oh, I don't know why. Why is that? Because his brain had normalized. See how powerful neurology is and the brain is? His brain had normalized and created a pattern that this was normal. So what we want to do with physical stress and spinal degeneration as it relates to physical stress is start to be conscious about the unconscious behaviors that are changing our nervous system negatively. Does that make sense? Think about that for a second. Think about what I just said. Start to be conscious about the unconscious behaviors and patterns that you actively do every day that are giving you a negative outcome related to your health and related to your nervous system. How you sit is a huge one. Am I saying control it? All these posture so-called gurus and experts, right? They're like, control it. And you see people walking around like this. Doc, my posture's great. No, it's not. You're controlling it, you goofball. It's not great. Your neurology's destroyed. You shouldn't, to have good posture, you shouldn't have to control it. It just happens. Does that make sense? That's not something you control. That would be like if you had teeth that looked like Fraggle Rock and you tried to do this. My teeth are great. That would be weird, right? You don't control it. That's neurology affecting those gums. It's not something you have to control. It's something that has to become normal, though. Does that make sense? So what would be a conscious behavior that we could start working on to retrain our spines and our nervous system and prevent some of this degeneration that we're getting? What do you think one would be? What do we do all the time? What did everybody probably do before they sat down for the talk right now? And if I wasn't blabbing my mouth, we'd all be doing it right now. Some of us would. Most of us would. And what are we usually doing? Are people up in this ergonomically amazing, spinal perfect, like, posture, and I would just be excited if I saw you? No, because I have to train Caden to tell you to get your head out of your phones, right? Get your head out of your phones, you goofy. Get your head out of your phone, because you're forward and down like this. We just created this beautiful mosaic painting in the bay, and you're going out and you look like you're playing a video game or something, right? It's Facebook or something. I just got 10 messages. I got to return this last email. Relax. Take a deep breath in. The bays and in here is time to relax. So if you're going in the bays, you shouldn't be emailing or texting. This is a place that sets you free if you allow it to. So cleanse yourself of that. Try to make this time sacred time for you to let go. But if you do have to send one text message, not 1,000, then I want your shoulders up like this, okay? I want it up as high as you can get it, right? And I'm an athletic guy wearing an athletic suit, so that's about it on the arms, right? So, but you got to be up here. I'm usually up here, my head's up here, and I got my phone at least right there when I'm clicking and texting and emailing. Do I do it that way perfectly all the time? No, of course not. But do I correct myself and make that unconscious behavior conscious now because I'm constantly working on it? Yes. What's the correct sleeping position in this office? No pillow where? No pillow under your neck or head. And pillows where, guys? Under your knees. Okay. Is it the same for everybody and everybody only has a half a pillow? And it's the My Pillow from the guy that's on the radio station. My Pillow, you do this, it'll change your life. Right? And he's just pounding it, isn't he? He's got that wham, bam, that perfect voice, doesn't he? Sounds like a football announcer. It's just like, what is it, Jim Madden? What's his name? What's Madden? Madden, what's his first name? Anybody? John Madden. There we go. I've forgotten. I used to play the video game. It's going to be boom, 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 right? That's exactly the way he is with the pillow. It's exactly the way he is. So we want one pillow or two pillows or three pillows, whatever works for you. And what are we trying to do there? Relax the lower back and then create more of a what? Yeah. Create more of a curve in your cervical curve. Because is your head connected to your tail? Yes. So you step on a dog's tail, what end does he bark out of? You got to affect both. You got to affect both. You can't just mess with one. You got to work on the entire spine and the neurology. So what we're doing when you sleep on your back with pillows under your knees, no pillow under your neck or head, is we're reshaping that curve and we're rewriting that neurology. Just like when you do your text messages, but you leave your phone up here. Just like when you alter your posture. So that's why everybody needs to get on the advanced healthcare class on the website, go to the posture video and watch it and share it with as many people as possible. And watch it over and over again to make that unconscious pattern now a conscious pattern and something that you implement. I'll answer your question in 1 second. Because when we talk about physical degeneration, physical spinal degeneration, what we're talking about is changing vectors and loads. When we look at this system and we look at these beautiful curves in the cervical area and the lower back area, this looks like a good suspension system, doesn't it? Anybody see that? Does anybody see how this looks like a good supportive system for stress in our body? Anybody not see that? Well, let me ask you this. If you don't see that, here's a curve in your neck. So the weight distribution, here's your head up here, here's your hips down here, okay? The only reason we didn't put it there for you guys is because neither Caden or I can draw, so some of you as artists, you're like wanting to die right now. But there it is. Okay, I'll put Herbert up here. So there's the curve in your lower back, and here's the curve in your cervical area. Okay, and he's subluxated a little bit, so don't get mad at him. He's got to get adjusted too. So you got a curve in the cervical area, you got a curve in the lower back. And now, do you see how if I'm trying to support the load, which I think the average head is between 12 and 20 pounds, something like that. Don't quote me on that. It's been a couple years since I've seen that data, okay? But whatever it is, 12 pounds, 20 pounds, 25 pounds, this is a small little bone, isn't it? That brainstem bone, that atlas. So when you look at vectors and loading, and you think about a 50-story building, don't those beams have to be in a certain position to take the load and the force and the velocity of that entire structure? And if you alter just even one beam, it changes what we call the tensegrity of the entire structure. Anybody familiar with tensegrity? It's the way when there's force applied like domes. A perfect tensegritous structure is a dome. So like think about any stadium or dome that you've been in, baseball, football, doesn't matter. If you remove one tile out of that stadium, you change the tensegrity or you compromise the overall system of the structure. Wow. It's profound, isn't it? Because it's designed to support the entire load. Your structure and the tensegrity of your structure is the same way. When you alter, even by 1 degree, that forward head posture, or you change that atlas angle from a 31 and it's at 30, or you change that forward head posture and you alter it at all, you change the load distribution. Now instead of being this perfect kind of bouncing swirl, so if you had pressure, the pressure would fall on this curve, then it would translate here, and then it would translate here. When you alter that, each segment takes the load in a different place where it innately wasn't designed to take the load. Is everybody tracking on that? Anybody totally lost or confused? If you are, please ask. I'm going to pause now because you had a question, and I want to make sure to entertain that. I'll take quick questions. If they're longer ones, I might cover them, and we'll wait till the end. But I will entertain really quick ones, okay? Just to be courteous of everybody's time and all that. Go ahead, go Paul. Okay, so I'm going to say a couple of things. So he's basically just sharing that sleeping on his back is unusual for him and feels a little different. And I'm not poking fun, but if you didn't do something for 30 or 40 or 50 years of your life, and I think he's only like 29 or something, right? If you didn't do something for like a long time in your life, is it fair to say it's going to take time for your body to get used to a new pattern? It's going to take time, right? Is it fair to say that that pattern is going to feel unusual, awkward, tiring, irritating maybe a little bit at first? Maybe you'll have like a voodoo doll of me and you'll be spearing me and throwing hot pepper in my eyes or whatever. I'll come to your house for dinner one day and there'll be like this doll laying around. I'm like, hey, he's got a shirt and tie on, a jacket. And there's all this stuff all over him and he's mutilated. And your cat pooped on him or whatever. And I'll be like, oh, that's just my doll. And you'll be, at any rate, made you guys laugh. Had to divert for a second. So does that make sense that it takes time though? It takes time to get used to that. But here's what I hear from people pretty regularly, is that after you do that, 3 days, 4 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it's different for everybody. The thing that I hear about 80 to 90% of the time in this practice, Doc, I can't sleep another way. People swear by it. They're like, I can't sleep another way. Is it because they just slept on their back? And that's what we need to do is just close down shop, sell traction units out of a Coke machine, and tell people to sleep on their back. Guys, if that's all it was, Dr. Tanya and I would be in Bermuda right now, and we would have machines, traction unit sales machines out here, and we would have beds, and somebody would just get the door and let you guys do traction and then let you lay down on a bed and correct the curve, right? Doesn't work that way. Some people think that, so that's why I said that. But we're retraining that neurology when we sleep. So yes, it takes time. It will be uncomfortable, but I resoundingly hear from people that after they do it, sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's 3 months for some people. But they hit a plateau point where that 30 minutes turns into 3 hours and 4 hours. Now, am I telling you guys to sleep on your back miserably and not sleep for hours and sweat and be like, I hate this man, and just be on your back miserable? No. I'm saying build on it. Get 30 minutes, because every time you come in here and we adjust you, are we just playing around and touching your feet? And we just swipe you and you breathe and you feel good and then we hug it up and that's it? All that stuff's great, but we're changing neurology in your body. So what you're doing, just like braces on teeth, is you're getting those teeth that were once going the wrong way and now we're setting them into the right position. The adjustment sets it in, puts in that neurological input into the spine and nervous system, and then what you do with your lifestyle behaviors, like your sleeping position, like your new way of texting, like your new way of sitting, like your new car position that you can also get out of the posture video, all those things help repattern that change. So I want you to just keep doing it, keep sticking with it, and I'm telling you on the other side of that will be victory. Because some of you came in here and you were 20, 30 degrees off, 50 millimeters off of normal for the forward head posture, right? Your curve was all messed up. You had a reverse curve, it was going the wrong way. Some of your segments were touching and rubbing on each other. That's going to be uncomfortable when we take those rubber bands and tell them to go back the other way. Every process requires time. And what you have to do is just breathe into that and not control that. That's where the emotional part comes in. So vectors and loads are very, very important for you to understand the importance of everything you need to do in here to be successful. That's why I'm hounding you about the breathe-in. That's why I'm hounding you about the traction. That's why I'm hounding you about your regularly scheduled appointments. Dr. Deed Harrison is the founder, his dad, Don Harrison, an amazing, amazing man. These guys have done so much research to bring chiropractic to the forefront. So much research. I mean, chiropractic biophysics is probably the leading technique in all of chiropractic, if not Activator and a couple others. There's some that are just right there in the top 5. We do a combination of chiropractic biophysics here, Pierce Steelwagon, Pedabon, right, and our curve correction. That doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot to you. You're like, you just lay on the table and I don't know what you're doing most of the time, right? But what we're doing retrains the neurology and helps bring those angles back. Why did I mention that? Because Dr. Harrison said that after the 12th adjustment, that 3 times a week for 12 weeks, for 36 adjustments, is what it takes in the initial phase of care to really alter physiology and really get a curve to change. So some of you, right, when you got your care plans here, you thought we were trying to run up the price on you or something, but that's what the research shows with what we need to do for you to be successful. The rest of our care plan is metered according to your results when we take films. So when I sit down with you before and after, your films and we talk about where you are or where you're not with your results, that's why I'm always putting that accountability on you. Because I'm always going to do my part. All the time. I'm always going to make you the star of the show every day that you're in here. But what I need you to do is do your part at home. Because your part is vital. Coming to these classes are vital. Doing the health hacks and watching the health hacks and getting involved and plugged in, it's vital, guys. Because what's the other thing that causes spinal degeneration? Chemical stresses. Well, what are some chemical stresses that we all deal with on a daily basis? Somebody name some. Name some chemical stresses. What's that? Pollution, absolutely. That's perfect, Jim. Can we control pollution? Well, maybe we could say that. Can we individually control pollution right now, get it to change tomorrow so it doesn't adversely impact our physiology? Okay, that's really what I meant there. A long-term strategy of just being a good person, totally agree with that, being in your integrity, right? Trying to do the right thing, not leave as much of a biological footprint, totally agree with that. But I'm talking about in the here, right now, your ecosystem and the air you breathe in is what it is. And as Grandpappy used to say, there ain't nothing you can do about it, right? So that being said, knowing that, what you can do about it is be very vigilant. Be very vigilant, because you're constantly getting in chemical loads that are making your health, if you think of health as a bucket, they're making that bucket fill up. And if you don't empty it, it's going to overflow. So pollution, Glade plug-it-ins, stuff you put in your hair, stuff you put on your face. What about inflammatory foods? Some of my Weston A. Price people that might be watching online, I'm not a big proponent of dairy. Think we got to keep dairy limited. And there's studies and research and all that. And you guys hear me in a million videos. I talk about we're the only animal that drinks another animal's milk. You don't see a baby cat trying to suck on a goat's teat. You just don't see that. It doesn't happen. So you got to think about that and what's the impact on your system because you're doing that. What's the impact on your system of gluten in your system? And your system overall reaches a point of overload, doesn't it? So that's why neurologically we have to check you from a subluxation standpoint for the rest of your life. Chemically, physically, emotionally. And that's what you can do to protect your family, protect yourself, protect your friends, and add life to your years and years to your life. And that's the only way to do it. Got to check the neurology. Got to get that neurology cleared. Chemical stresses from foods are huge. Water, if we're drinking tap water, think about the chemical impact of that. So when you get inflammation around your entire body, what does it start to do to the musculature around your lower back, around your neck, around your arms, around your shoulders? It makes it tight, doesn't it? So some of you, when I touch you and I look at your feet and then I compare your x-ray, you're like, well, I meditate for 4 hours a day. I don't understand why it's like this. But you're going to McDonald's every day. Or you're going to Applebee's or Olive Garden. Seriously, guys, I'm telling you, you have to watch. And we'll do a million talks on nutrition. And some of you are like, yeah, I've heard this before. And some of you don't know that. Some of you think that good food is Applebee's. You think good food is Chili's. Seriously, there are people in this practice, so I'll never quit saying this. They don't know. I'm not trying to put anybody down. I'm just trying to educate you because I love you and I care about you. Because I used to think that too. When I was in my bodybuilding days after I got out of the Marine Corps, I thought that if I ate like 5 chicken breasts from Chili's, right? Because that's all you do when you're a bodybuilder. You just eat protein and then you get constipated and you wonder why, right? Everybody's looking around. Me crush Big Rock into Little Rock, right? And everybody's confused about why, and you ate all this protein. It's crazy. But so at any rate, you know, when that happens and we get all that chemical stress in our body, I just ate 5 turkey breasts and they all had hormones and antibiotics. Now I'm getting that animal's hormone and antibiotics into my system. And then you're microwaving food. And all that radiation is killing all the nutrients in your food. You see where all this stuff, we start to look at this. And guys, I'm not telling you to be scared and go slit your wrist right now. What I'm telling you is every day and every process and every time you learn something, implement it. Implement it. My wife and I know so much. And we implement probably about 96% of what we learn directly into our life. Because as healthcare advocates, it would be kind of like hypocritical if we didn't. We're about to switch to a new water filtration system. For a while, we had to go to plastic bottles. I got the Palomar Airport water for you guys now. Why did I do that? Because Carlsbad water, there's some studies that show that it's acidic. Not to try to throw them under the bus. Yep, if you do a little pH test of that. And what's the other thing? If something's really basic and it is alkaline, that's going to be great if I have full-blown cancer, isn't it? If I have full-blown cancer, is alkaline water great? Absolutely. But what if I don't have full-blown cancer? What's the stomach supposed to be, basic or acidic? To break down the food, right? So now if I drink alkaline water, what am I doing to your gastrointestinal system? Making it more what? Alkaline or basic. So then what's going to happen? What type of symptomatology are you going to have? Bloating, gas, digestive issues? We got somebody cleared neurologically, got them off alkaline water. In 2 weeks, they were totally different from a digestive standpoint. Totally different. Some people's bodies can handle it, but my recommendation is that's another toxin that puts us in inflammation. Inflammation shuts down the nervous system, shuts down these nerves and their ability to communicate life from the brain down the cord and out to the organs at 100%. And then those same nerves that go to the organs start to tense up those muscles. Those hard bones move out of place. They subluxate. You get tight. You have lower back stuff, neck stuff, migraines, right? Poor posture, whatever it is. Emotional breakdowns, anxiety, depression, because the nerves going to the stomach control that as well, because that goes to the second gut, the stomach. You might have skin conditions. See where this is going? You might have chronic pain, fibromyalgia. Saw a research study that talked about that. Now, I can talk about something all day long, but when I show you guys a pretty picture, it's like, I don't know what it is, but it just like sets it off. Everybody believes it then. So here's your pretty picture for the night. Okay? Now, you see all these lines, and it probably seems really confusing. That's why I'm not going to explain it. But I am going to explain 2 things to you that are really, really important. What does this say? Psychological stress trigger event. And what does this say? And what does that say? Okay. Do you think in order for all this stuff not to go wrong, to create chronic widespread pain, fibromyalgia, or put in there degenerative disc disease, don't you kind of think that we need to alter physiology and we need to alter genetics? How do we do that? Well, there's something called epigenetics, which is when we make different lifestyle choices now that our ancestors didn't make. When we choose right now to do something different than what they did. Great book called Biology of Life by Dr. Bruce Lipton. Now, your childhood emotionally can still affect you. This is where the emotional stresses come in. And you can still be triggered by events, for sure, right? But when we do NET on you and you do your breathing at home, what does that do to your cortisol levels from getting them over that point where you start to alter physiology? What does it do? Keeps them normal. It lowers them, absolutely. Because you're supposed to have a certain amount of cortisol. Did you guys know that? And I always talk about the bad parts of cortisol, and what I'm talking about is getting too much cortisol in the system. Your body has to release a little bit of cortisol. But what happens when we get in that fight or flight state and we're in the woods, we're running from the bear's trying to kill us? That's abnormal cortisol levels. Does everybody understand that? Does that make sense? And again, that's going to subluxate and create degeneration in the spine and the nervous system. Those trigger events subconsciously put more cortisol in the system, and the system starts to shut down. So over 20, 40, 60 years, a disc that used to be nice and thick like that turns into that. And then you end up in my office, and you're wondering how you went to somebody that just adjusted you and made you feel good, and why they weren't able to take you from here to here or even get some semblance of the angles. And you're like, my angles are all off. I've got 40 millimeters forward head posture. I had a lady the other day. She's like, Doc, I don't understand. I've been going to a chiropractor for 30 years, but I haven't gone in 5 years. Well, what do you think 5 years can do to a spine, guys? What would 5 years do to you if you didn't brush your teeth? Seriously, guys. I say that to you guys all the time, and you guys think I'm saying that just to be cute. But decay in your body from a physiological perspective, really, it always works the same. Does that make sense? So whenever you get stumped on why you should do something, why you should do a health hack and watch a health hack at 7:30 on Mondays, or why you should mark off your calendar one time a month and get your friends and family to come here and come to these talks, I want you to think about this. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewing. So we constantly have to get dipped. I go to church every Sunday. Do I think I know more than Jesus and I got it all figured out? And anybody that's not a Christian, it's okay. We love you just the same. But I got to get dipped in. Any of you that are spiritual and you meditate, or you believe in auras, chakras, whatever you believe in, right? You got to get dipped into your world and your universe in order to connect with your creator, whatever your creator is. And if you don't have a creator, hey, call it nature, call it whatever you want, okay? I'm just saying, in order for you to be the person in life that you want to show up as, you have to get re-dipped into that philosophy every day to show up at 100%. Your spinal nervous system help is the same way. And you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your family to give that 120% effort as much as possible. There's always mitigating circumstances. There always is. And there's always a reason. But there's also some time where we need to say internally, hey, maybe I need to check my integrity a little bit. And I don't mean my integrity from a moral standpoint. It's not what integrity is. Well, it is according to Webster's, right? What I mean is not lying to yourself. Anybody know about that integrity? When you tell yourself, when you break that word to yourself, the condemnation, guilt, and grief that you give yourself and how that takes away years that you're actually living on the planet because you have those negative thought processes going through your brain, that's the integrity I'm talking about. Let's get more of that. Let's get more of having that amazing, wonderful integrity where we love ourselves all the time and we feel good about the decisions and the actions and the things that we're doing and the commitments we're making. Let's partner on that too. Think we can do that? Awesome. So a physical stress I didn't mention a few minutes ago, was we talked about forward head posture, but what we didn't say was that forward head posture does what to the cushions in between the discs? What happens? This is called synovial fluid in between here. What does it do to this synovial fluid? Like let's relate, yeah, it crushes it. So think about this. When we talked about loads, if you didn't understand that part, I just wanted to go back for a second because I was looking at my notes. Think about a football player, and who played football in here? Okay, so then anybody that played football knows you're supposed to keep your head up when you tackle. Why is that? Anybody know why? Why do you keep your head up when you tackle instead of putting your head down like that? Yeah, so you don't compress your neck. But because flexion, when your head's forward in flexion, what does it do? Those joints, those facet joints, and those articulations at each vertebral level in your spine, each joint, and I didn't even want to cover this tonight specifically because it would be really confusing for you guys. Not that you guys aren't smart, but I could spend 15 minutes just on that, right? So each segment has a different articulation with the segment above and below it. That's how complicated the spine is. And the way it rotates, the way it laterally translates, all that, right? So the way C1 and C2, the atlas bone and C2, move on top of each other, and the rest of the spine below that, when you go forward, it puts an undue amount of stress and load, and that's why when your head's forward instead of up, that's why there's so many football injuries and spinal paraplegia and quadriplegics and all these different types of spinal cord injuries related to football. They say there's about 14% that occur that way. 14%. So now let's take that down and just look at that on a smaller scale. Forward head posture related to sitting positions, driving, texting. You see where I'm going with this? So that's why really taking that unconscious behavior and making it conscious, which is something else I learned from Dr. Harrison. I knew that already, but I really like that line. So I didn't want to steal it. I'm going to give him credit, right? Because he wrote it, right? Taking that unconscious thing and now making it conscious. Now that's what we're doing when we adjust you and we correct the neurology. But now you're putting that into action and you're being empowered to take action and really follow through so that you can have success with what you're trying to do with your health. And that's where that commitment comes from. That's why I'm so big on you about the talks and following through and making sure to make the health hacks. Oh, what about purses and backpacks related to physical stress? Ladies, how about switching those purses, or guys, let's make the backpacks lighter, and sometimes let's take the backpacks off and carry it on one arm or the other. So essentially what I'm saying is you should always be switching how you carry something. You don't want to carry something the same way all the time. Just like you don't want to do the same workout every day. And if you look in the advanced healthcare class, right, and you look for the rest of the year, we're going to be covering a nervous system based or centered workout at some point and what that looks like to give you guys some ideas of workout plans that you can do. Because some of you, you're running. I heard about a lady the other day. She's like biking a zillion miles a week. And I was like, well, maybe we should do this and try this and not do that, right? And so I'm subtly making changes. And if you're that person that told me you were biking, I'm not beating you up. I love you, right? But all I'm saying is I want to tone that down a little bit, add a little bit of resistance stretching in there, because your body, if it goes through that physical, emotional, chemical stress over time, you're going to exacerbate this. You're not going to make it better. So 3 things we always tell people that affect maintenance are how old you are, how much decay there is, and what your lifestyle's like. So the lifestyle is the sitting, it's the emotional stress, and it's the chemical stress, and what you're doing to avert it. Does that make sense? So do you think from a chemical standpoint, it'd probably be a good idea to take my subluxation support if I'm supposed to take it 9 times a day? It'd probably be a good idea to follow the 9 times a day protocol? Probably, right? Or if I'm taking, let's say if I'm doing my 49 breaths, like doing 3 sets of 14 and 1 set of 7 twice a day and doing the affirmations in between. Why do I have you do that? Is it because it just makes me feel good for you to waste your time in the mornings? No. 49 is what it takes for your physiology to change and you to go from a sympathetic stress state to a rest and digest parasympathetic state. And some of you, you don't notice it, but we notice it over time. After you're getting adjusted and you're doing all these protocols that we're implementing, and guys, this is maybe like 40 minutes of your life a day, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening. we notice that you come in and you're a different person. And you're like shocked that we tell you that and like we're making it up. Oh, you're actually a lot more loving today, and you hugged me and you've never done that. Really? Yeah. Sometimes we can't see ourselves, can we? And how we're showing up, so we need feedback from others. We need feedback from others. And now there's some people, when they give you feedback, you start looking at what's going on in their life, and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to take feedback from Uncle Charlie, right? He's 80 pounds overweight, sits on the TV all day, and he just collects disability, and he really is getting it and shouldn't be, right? Uncle Charlie's probably not the one we want to take advice from. But if it's somebody you respect and a bunch of people are telling you the same thing, you probably better follow that advice and start looking at it. Pray about it, meditate about it, and see if it resonates with you or not. What do we think are some of the other things that can cause emotional stress in our life? What are some factors that could lead to some type of emotional stress in our life? Name some. Family definitely can, right? Can we get rid of our family and fire them all? No, we can't do that. So we have to deal with that, don't we? So then what are the steps to deal with that? Well, we talked about breathing. What's another strategy to deal with that? How about NET, neuro-emotional technique? And then I always recommend some of you, a lot of times with your emotional stress and what you're dealing with, it's not a problem, or it's not really a factor that you don't know how to process what you're dealing with, but you don't necessarily know how to process some of the subconscious stuff that you're dealing with. And so often that's what people deal with. They don't really know how to deal in the subconscious stuff that goes on, because you don't know that you don't know that you didn't know it. Meaning, if it's not there and if it's in a filing cabinet somewhere, you could be happy-go-lucky and meditate for 4 hours a day. But that's why it's subconscious. So then we start testing, you're like, I don't have any stress, I don't have any stress, I don't have any stress. And yet you're like this. You're like this. And you wonder why. You're like, oh, everything's fine, everything's fine. Somebody pulls in front of you, almost runs you over, everything's cool. So you think that operating in this kind of Jimmy Buffett, living in a Margaritaville world and letting people trample over you means that you know how to handle emotional stress. That's just as bad as being the guy screaming and yelling and all that, right? There's a productive way to draw boundaries. So what we'll do a lot of times is not only will we make sure that you're doing the 49 breaths, we'll add in the NET, and then we might say, you know what, here's a great book that I recommend that you start reading, that's going to give you guidelines on how you can release some of this stuff, get some of this out on paper, and then what does that do for us? It's more ammunition for us to know what to work on. Because does emotional stress cause gastrointestinal disorders in the body? Absolutely. Goes back to 1950, Hans Selye, an MD. I was looking at stuff dealing with cortisol and affecting the adrenals, the liver, and the stomach, which I talk about all the time. A few minutes ago, a new research study I hadn't seen. And that's basically what this fancy thing means. HPA axis, HPA, okay, is the hypothalamic pituitary axis. So out of your brain, you have your hypothalamus, which communicates with your anterior pituitary, right? And then that sends signals down your spinal cord and throughout your entire body. And what they're saying is the signals from the brain to the pituitary to the adrenal glands, that's a big deal, because that affects the stomach, the liver, and every process in your body, because it affects your neurotransmitters. So if we're affecting all these chemical pathways, do you think the emotions of that, from an emotional thought that's creating this cycle and deteriorating this cycle, do you think that's going to have an impact on the spinal segments? Yes or yes? Is it then going to have an impact on how many dots I have on my bubble sheet? I don't know why I have 90,000 dots, Doc, but I travel all over the world, or I own a business and I'm up 24 hours a day, or I wake up at 4 in the morning and I only get 3 hours of sleep. I don't understand that. There's a huge connection there. You know, I made an agreement with myself recently, because who binge watches like Netflix and stuff like that? I'll admit, I do, right? And I don't watch TV, but I watch these new shows to release stress and stuff. But it's interesting, because there was a point where I just thought I was okay and I could kind of handle like violent stuff, because I read a book way back when, right? I read a book way back when. It was called The Way to the Superior Man by David Daida, okay? Beautiful book. And one of the things that it said in the book is it said, well, for your emotional stress, you know, men, so it talks about the masculine and the feminine energies, right? And it was one of the first books I ever read, so it was like shocking to me, right? This is a guy coming from the Marine Corps, being a very cut and dry ABCD guy, cross your T, dot your I, crush big rocks into little rocks. That's who Dr. Williams used to be. And so I read this book and my mind's blown. It's talking about feminine energy and masculine and all that. And I'm like, what, a guy can cry and say cutie bear or something if he wants or whatever? That was just totally foreign to me. And so I'm reading this book, and in there it talks about how men have this kind of caveman, barbaric like part of them that needs to be released. And I would tend to agree with that. That's probably true. We like to protect the homeland and all that instinctually, right? It's like part of our DNA, basically. We want to take care of our women, you know? That's the caveman stuff, right? It's just like an innate Neanderthal type of instinct, right? That being said, I'm reading this book, and it talks about how men should go to violent movies or do stuff that gets that, yeah, that really did. It said you need to get something out. You need to be able to channel your masculine energy. And maybe it didn't say violent movies, and maybe Dr. Williams at that time inserted that, right? Maybe I inserted that. Let's be truthful about this, right? Maybe I did. So I was telling myself that. And I wouldn't watch the news. I've always been against really watching the news for a long period of time. Maybe checking in, but then you turn it off, cut it off, right? Have a limitation on it. I don't do Facebook anymore unless I'm posting something real quick. My marketing lady takes care of that. So I'm like, okay, I'll watch these movies. Not a big deal, right? Not a big deal. I'll watch these movies. And then I noticed that it started making my intensity from my Marine Corps days intensify at certain times. Like I would just like get frustrated or irritated about something small. And I started really analyzing the character on the show and realizing that I used to be that guy. Maybe I didn't kill people and all that other stuff. That's definitely true. I didn't. I said that weird. Definitely didn't kill people or do all the weird stuff he's doing in the show, but the energy was similar. So what's that creating more of in my body? Cortisol. And what's that doing to this nice little guy? Messing it up. And then what do we get? Insert it. Chronic widespread pain is what it says, but you can insert that with any condition you have actively going on in your body right now. Degenerative disc disease. So we talked about vectors. We talked about loads. We talked about reshaping the spine and the nervous system. We talked about getting the head back. We talked about making conscious or unconscious thoughts conscious, meaning what we do in our daily activities and lives that's limiting our forward head, limiting the curve we're supposed to have in our lower back. And then we talked about things that we can do on a daily basis for chemical stress and emotional stress. Now you just got to put them into place and start doing them. So what I want is next time we do this, next month, okay, I think the subject is going to be on resistance stretching. And if I'm not mistaken, it's going to be on the 5 things that you didn't know about the way you stretch now and what it's doing to your body. And the differences between what we do with our resistance stretching, which is a neurological thing, that after we get your body centered in the neurology, now you're ready to do this stretching because it's going to work with the nerves and not just the muscle. So stay tuned for that. Mark your calendar. Make sure to tune in on Monday nights at 7:30 for the health hacks. Every single Monday, this would be an exception because we had the class tonight. But every single Monday, we're going to do a different subject. And what I might do is in the newsletter, give you a place where you can kind of write back to us and tell us ideas that you have or subjects that you want me to do a health hack on. And I'd be happy to do it. Now, if you want a dissertation on it, unfortunately, I can't do that. It's going to be 10 minutes. So if there's a specific, if you want to specify what you want and you know, I would love to have that conversation. Next Monday night, I got a special guest for you guys on the health hack. It's going to be my functional nutritionist, Chris Lippe. And what Chris and I are going to be talking about is turmeric. That's going to be on the 19th. And Standard Process has released a product called Turmeric Forte, I believe. They put a forte on everything. I think it's Turmeric Forte. Don't ask me what the forte means. I'm going to have to ask Chris. But turmeric is one of those products that, just like echinacea or some of the other things I've been talking to you guys about, it's a product that if you buy it anywhere else, a lot of times it's not crossing the blood-brain barrier or the gut barrier. And Standard Process has created a way with their vacuum seal method to allow it to cross and get into the blood-brain and also get into the gut so that you can get the positive impact of turmeric. Because the life cycle of turmeric, meaning how long it stays in your body when it's synthetic, It's like, I don't know, like 2 hours or something. And standard process, it stays in your body for 12 hours. Isn't that awesome? So that's what we're going to be talking about, okay? Any other questions? Okay, well, God bless you. Thanks for coming tonight. I know you'll be blessed by it. Did everybody get something out of tonight? Yes. Beautiful. Love and appreciate you guys, okay? Take care.